Alright, so next shot, time for a little bit of an intermission. Because this one is quite different, of course, from all of the other shots. It's not particularly that tricky. It is quite slow to render. I can already tell. Yeah, let's just get into it. Let's start building our setup. So it's going to be quite simple because we don't really have that much geometry. And I'm just gonna start by importing my RNDR iceberg and RNDR pieces, and then after that we are going to do the debris, because we don't want to do the debris immediately because this is really going to slow the whole setup down. So for now we just want to focus on the main pieces here. So we have this large piece over here, and then we have that one. So let's give it a name. Call it iceberg base, something like that, and then iceberg pieces. Oh, let's maybe also switch our view to Solaris. All right, there we go. You can already see it immediately start rendering in Karma. Let's just merge these two together. There we go, and there we go. I don't think we have to deal too much with organizing this stuff because, I mean, we only have a couple of different things. So I don't think that's going to be particularly problematic. You see some weird stuff here going on. What we might want to do is, before this whole thing sort of explodes outwards, or do we want to do that? Let's just keep it like this for now. I think maybe we might need to geo swap stuff out, but maybe this will already look good without doing that, because of course now with this flat material you're really gonna see some weird stuff going on here with the normals. Could try computing a couple of new normals there, but we are gonna need to do some custom normals as well anyway. Let's just see what it looks like with some right, yeah, so that's not really gonna do anything. So let's just assign a couple of materials. So in here we can basically just do a material library and just dump a principled shader in here. Call it ice, and let's do assign material and assign it to this whole thing, because they're pretty much all gonna have the same material, so there's not really any need to do anything super complex. Let's put a scene import cameras here. So we actually have the camera to look through. There we go. And let's do some lights. Let's do environment lights. So let's again grab something of an HDRI from Polyhaven, and I'm just gonna search for snow. There's a whole bunch of different ones. I'm gonna use this one. Already downloaded it, so I'm gonna go in here to $root / and I just go. You can see it erroring. Assets HDRI in a snowy park. There we go, and let's just rotate a little bit. It's gonna be easier to tell if this, like with the light, once we get our materials on. I mean, we have a material on, but I mean, once we get sort of our material actually properly set up. So I'm gonna do this material a little bit different than I did it with my original, after some experimenting here for the tutorial. So my original actually didn't really use much of a refractive material because it was really slow to render. But after like knowing Karma a little bit better, I think we can get away with it. With a little bit of tweaks here and there. So in this ice material, let's first do the base color, and let's make it basically off-white. You can already see these issues here are starting to get less of an issue. And let's, by the way, maybe jump back a couple or forward a couple of frames so we actually have some pieces here. Because it actually already looks a little bit like ice, even though we didn't really do anything with it. But of course, this is just a very basic sort of diffuse type of material. So maybe we want to add some a little bit of extra detail to this whole thing. We can either use texture displacement, or we can just use noise displacement in this case to maybe just add a little bit of extra detail. So just enable that, and it's going to go all over the place. Let's do a little bit lower, maybe like 0.03. You can see a problem here arising where these things are disconnecting at the edges. So that doesn't happen in Mantra. I don't know why this happens in Karma and Solaris with the principal shader. I think they should probably just fix this and treat it as a bug. But there's a way to sort of fix this yourself with a custom normal that we can then put inside of the principal shader. So in order to do that, we should do a normal swap over there. Let's, by the way, just turn off Karma. And let's give it a new name. Let's call it custom N, or something like you could call it anything. Let's put it on a point. And then we want to put it inside of our principal shader. So in order to do that, you need to right click, allow editing of content, and it will make the whole shader editable. And then you can dive in. And if you've never done that, you're going to be like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? Because there's this is what the principal shader looks like on the inside. It's actually there's a lot of nodes. It's not particularly complex if you just get down to the details of it, but it's just a lot of parameters that are promoted. What we're interested in is displacement. By the way, you can search for stuff with Ctrl F on your keyboard if you get lost. But we have this displacement tab here. You can see there's a whole bunch of displace nodes, and here they are loading the global N. So that's the global normal basically. So global variables and then surface normal. What we want to do instead is want to bind our custom normal, and for that we kind of need to know what type it is. So if you middle mouse on your normal here and have a look at your custom normal, custom N, you can see it's tree float normal, same as a regular, it's tree float normal. So we need to put this bind to tree float vector, because there's multiple types. There's also a vector type, regular vector and tree floats vector. In a lot of scenarios, like you never really care for what you put it to, but there's some specific scenarios where you actually need to really specify the correct type in order to have this work properly. So let's just set it to the correct type. Call it custom N. Maybe just copy paste our things, and we just are completely sure that we're actually loading the right thing in. Let's maybe just do a switch over here. Let's not put the normal in the switch input, so let's disconnect that. Let's put it there, and then let's put our custom N in the second input. Oh, I need to undo this a couple of times because I think I accidentally unlinked some stuff there. Right, you can see it's linked to a couple more things. So let's do this thing to this. Let's put that output to this thing. So you can see it goes into two nodes. So to displace texture, so displace texture and displace. And then the second input here, we're going to put our custom N, and then we're going to put this switch to the second input. Now it's gonna, for the displacement, it's gonna use our custom normal, which is point normal. And now if we go over here to the left, this should work. Let's try. So it's still using, all right, I need to actually put it to auto update. So it's still going to use the regular normal for the other stuff. And all right, for some reason, it's still breaking. That should not happen. All right, so for some reason, by enabling, disabling and enabling it, I'm forcing it now to cook. And you can see the issue is gone. So I guess that was it. So it just wasn't updating the thing itself. Anyway, so now you can see the whole thing is connected properly. Again, you could also just use a texture for this, but like the noise pattern works quite well to just add some detail to the thing that we're doing here. So of course this is still it's pretty much just a solid piece. We cannot really look into it. So there's multiple ways you could do this ice, and depending on your like on the system that you're running this on. Because I'm gonna be doing this with some transparency in there, some reflection, and that's gonna make the whole thing a lot slower. You could also, if this is gonna be too slow for you, just keep this at just diffuse color. You could, oh, I'm accidentally moving some sliders here. But if it's gonna be too slow for you, you could also just keep it as is here, and you could perhaps do a little bit of subsurface scattering instead to sort of have it feel a little bit more softer. I'm gonna use the reflection. Subsurface is still not the fastest, or you could just render it as diffuse, because you can see if we turn on denoising here, this is quite fast. But once we now start, let's do our actual transparency. Let's turn up transparency. This is gonna make it a lot slower. You see, now we're gonna get a much more sort of icy look. Let's, by the way, really increase the roughness. And realistically, if you want like real realism, you would say that, right, you really need to turn this up to 1. We could do it for now. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit, but you can see this is starting to look really cool, really like ice. I'm not gonna completely do that because if we go back a couple of frames, see, this is starting to look quite different from the stuff over here, because this is not really fractured. You could try with the refraction limit up that, but it's not gonna really make a difference here. So one thing that I do want to do, and I am going to turn down the transparency here in a little bit to sort of do a mix between just the base color and refraction. But what I am also gonna do is I'm gonna actually fracture the sort of the base geo here. So it actually has some pieces, and in terms of look, then it's going to match a little bit more to our sort of our eyes. Let's just go in there. But this also pretty much looks like more like tiny ice pieces, and we want it to be more like an iceberg. So this would probably be too refractive, or refractive for like a piece of ice of that size anyway. But I'm going to go into the R&D iceberg, and let's turn off this whole camera thing. Let's go to our second view. Let's hide some stuff here. Let's actually shatter this, so we actually get a couple of pieces. So in terms of look, then it's gonna be a little bit more similar, because then we also get some pieces that are gonna be refractive. So let's do ISO offset. Let's get a couple of points in there. Let's turn off relax. Let's just increase amount of points. Let's do Voronoi fracture. In. Might actually need to do a little bit less pieces, because I think this might be a little bit slow. All right, it's actually not too bad. Let's do file cache. Let's save this out, so we don't have to cook this every time. Turn off simulation. Let's put it to single frame. $job again. Make sure to always put it to $job. And call it iceberg static, something like that. Save to disk and load from disk, and let's do out. Right, let's go back in here and let's put this in the base instead, so we're always sure that we're loading the correct piece. Go over there to the left. It's gonna slow things down a little bit here, but not gonna be too bad. All right. So let's go over there and look through our thing. Starting to be a little slower side. Alright, just have a look here why this is. Oh, I need to turn off time dependent cache, else of course it's gonna save it with $F for appended to it, and we want it to be static cache, so that's why it wasn't showing up. So now we do have an actual proper cache here. Let's merge the other stuff in. Let's go forward a couple of frames. And it's this bird. All right, there we go. There we go. Merge it in. Materials. All right, so there's one weird thing here. Let's do clear, autofill, assign. Oh, I think it's because we have reflection now on the on there, so it's trying to in the viewport, trying to sort of do the reflection. So that's just mainly just looking weird here in this case. We're gonna turn that down anyway. So let's just try to render this again. Karma gonna be a little bit slower. All right, so now you can see the look is a little bit more similar because the actual static parts are also fractured. So this is of course still not what we want. You can see it's still a little bit darker there. We're gonna deal with that in a little bit. Let's just go in here and let's actually go a little bit in between. So let's not use completely transparent. Let's just go a little bit in between. And all right, you can already see that working. I want to make sure that we have rest positions on our static iceberg as well. All right, so what I probably also want to do is I want to maybe just bring this full iceberg actually into the same geometry as the pieces, so they're treated as one geo inside of layers. I think that might actually help with just bringing this a little bit more together. Let's just merge it in, and all right, let's remove the pieces from this thing here, and we're just gonna have the base. All right, karma. Wait, we need to go here on the right. And all right, so it looks like we need to actually load it like this. There we go. All right, and let's have a look how that looks visually. Karma. All right, so add. All right, we already had those. All right, let's see why the displacement here is messing up. Let's just increase this by a lot, see if it actually works. I'm actually just being stupid. I didn't have the material here turned on, so of course not going to work if you don't turn your material on, Tim. That is pretty logical. All right. We also, of course, need to put our custom normal down here because we also need it on the rest of the geo. All right, so now everything theoretically should render. Let's just try that. Karma. All right, initializing. And all right, let's go here. Oh, let's turn materials again on. It's not working if you don't turn it on, Tim. Don't be so stupid. All right, initializing. All right, there we go. Seems to do something. All right, let's turn this off. Let's increase our frequency here a little bit. Let's turn on karma again. All right, so now you can see we get some detail on there. It's a little bit too much. I just want a little bit of sort of rough detail. It's maybe not enough. Let's try 15. Just want to add sort of, else it's just going to be too hard of edges. I just wanted a little bit of 22. Maybe this noise here is now a little bit too extreme. Maybe we could do like 40. All right, let's just play with some more of our material here. Let's increase the transparency a little bit. Get a little bit more in the ice direction. And there's, so you still see, like, this is much too shadowy. We have very hard sort of edges there. That's where these fake caustics here are super useful. So they're essentially, yeah, fake trash, let's just read it. Let's light pass through refractive areas of the surface. This can be used to make the shadows of transparent objects transparent without the need for expensive caustics or indirect light bounces. So of course, if you're gonna sort of try to bounce light all the way in here, it's gonna need a lot of bounces. It's gonna be heavy. With fake caustics, you can essentially just get rid of that. See, if we turn that on, immediately we get much softer. So essentially the shadow opacity here is just going to be the shadows here in the center. So if we turn that on up, it's going to be darker there. So you can play around with that. Transmission tint. If we turn, let's just turn these both to 0. You can see kind of clear, see what's going to be, it's going to do. So you can see now we get a much sort of softer thing here. Let's turn these on a little bit. All right. You do see it's sort of, it's not the fastest to resolve on itself because refractions are still, of course, quite slow. Again, you can play here with the refraction limit. And again, like probably if we turn this too low, or if you turn this lower, it might result in issues. And actually, still looks pretty decent here. So we might actually be able to get away with just relatively low refraction limit. So that might actually be good. And again, like normally, maybe if you're gonna do some RBD stuff, you might not want these sort of shattered edges that we have there a little bit. But in our case, it doesn't really matter. And now it suddenly looks weird again. Oh, karma. All right. Just go back in this thing. Let's enable and disable. Oh, right. We had the material turned off again. And again, but like normally you might not want those sort of hard edges. But in this case, because it's sort of ice, I kind of like having sort of these cracks in there. So that actually works, and that's why we sort of pre-fractured also these parts. So you see this works quite well here. Before we bring in the debris, let's maybe enable some motion blur on this, or maybe let's jump through a couple frames here to see if this actually holds up in other frames as well. Not the fastest thing ever, but all right, seems to hold up here as well. Looking pretty juicy. We can look over here as we want. This might be a little bit easier to see. So you can see we do have these sort of fractured looking edges, but again, because this is ice, this kind of looks nice. So I don't particularly care for that. I think it adds to the sort of rough look, and you don't even need a texture now to do that. That's why we can get away with just displacement. In my original scene, I actually also had some textures on there, but this worked well enough, and I don't really particularly see the need to use those, because this works nicely. I like this. We can make this work in compositing. All right, so let's jump to another frame. Let's, by the way, go out of this and turn off Karma, because this is getting really slow. All right, let's turn off Karma. All right, so a whole bunch of pieces here. Maybe what we can try to see if we get rid of the name attribute here, then it's going to load it as being one piece. Right, let's keep this link to our first frame. Let's delete the name attribute, and it's going to be on here. All right, so you see if we get rid of the name, then now it's no longer going to load it in here as separate pieces. So that might actually help with the speed of this whole thing. It's still going to resolve slow, but at least it's not going to treat it as 1001 different pieces. And you can see it doesn't really make a difference in terms of how it looks here. So you can see now the scrubbing is also faster. So that's one thing that I did notice, and that we're going to notice a lot when we start getting into the debris. Debris with all these individual particles is going to be really, really slow. But yeah, we'll get to that when we get to that. Let's first do the geometry settings. Actually, enable our motion blur on this thing. There we go. Set or create, velocity blur. Let's just do all of the things. Like, oh, you know what? Actually, we only need velocity blur, so let's just keep that on. All right. Maybe we want to turn off our material for now. Just focus on our velocity, and you can see our velocity works. So we get nice motion blur here. So that's working. Turn our material back on. Go to the actual, all right. All right, so yeah, you can see this render. You can see this is gonna take a long time to resolve. So this render was quite low. It was one of the slower renders. But again, like if you have a very slow computer, I probably recommend just turning off this transparency altogether and just render it, just diffuse. That's gonna resolve a lot faster. And it looks like reasonably similar, and that's how I actually rendered my my original. But it looks a little bit nicer with the refraction in there. So gonna depend on how much time you want to spend on making this thing work. All right, so now let's load in our debris. So let's do another stop import. Let's do the debris. Let's put it in there. All right, you can already see what I meant before. It doesn't like this. If it has to load a ton of back primitives, you can see it just takes forever. All right. So you can see over here, this is now loading with like all of the individual pieces here as separate sort of nodes with pieces in there. So that is really slow. So let's see if we can make this a little bit faster. So the problem here is that like every time this loads in, it tries to construct this entire hierarchy of copies. And you might be familiar with this if you try this to do this just in regular Houdini, just exporting an alembic or something with points or like with packed stuff, and it's going to do the same in Maya, and it will make Maya completely break. So let's set up some native instances here inside of Solaris. One thing that I'm a little bit confused about, like there is an option actually on this thing to create native instances or to create a point instancer, but it doesn't necessarily really work. So actually not completely sure then why it is even there, because it's essentially what it's like. Let me just scrub through this. All right, it's freezing now, so you can see it's still slow. Let me just wait for this to finish cooking. So you can see this doesn't necessarily do anything. So let's just do our own instancer. Let's just delete this thing. All right, there we go. And let's do a essentially a copy to point. And what we want to do is let's go onto let's navigate to our thing here, and let's grab these points that we have here out points. And let's merge those in here. Let's object merge. And let's load those points in here. All right. Not doing anything yet, but we also need to grab our little piece here. Out. Piece. And then we want to load this piece in here. So import. And let's load our piece in there. And I guess we could just call this geometry pieces. All right. So let's put set variant. So we want to set this as a variant for our instance. And let's just give this a variant index of 0. So if we wanted to have more pieces down the line, so this is our main piece. If we wanted to have more pieces, could give this multiple variants. And now essentially what we want to do is just put this into possible prototypes. And all right, it's gonna take a little bit. All right, so this finished cooking, and you can see this is still not what we want because we get basically the same thing here. We're going to go into options and then turn off use entire stage as prototype. And again, it's going to be slow. Just maybe we should turn off auto update before this keeps breaking. So let's wait for this for a little bit. All right, let's put this to index 0. And we actually want this to be a point instancer instead. So let's have a look if this is going to work. Because he is constantly presenting me a nice spinning thing. Stuff like this. It's not all like stuff is still a little bit slow sometimes. All right. So now we have a bunch of things here. Probably want to go inside of this thing where we're loading these points. Not sure why. Showing me a bunch of other things here because we don't just have these points. Want to attribute delete some stuff off here. Probably want to delete everything except for p-scale, except for orient, except for velocity. All right. Maybe we want to actually set our p-scale in here instead. I'm gonna make it a little bit larger. All right, it's maybe too big. Let's also just open a stage in here. All right, let's do something like this. So as you can see now, this is a lot faster. So essentially, all we have now is just a copy the points here, and we have prototypes, and the prototypes are these things that are listed on here. So these are the pieces, and on here we can set the index. So let's say we had a different piece that would be a sphere, for example. Let's just grab this thing. Can we actually do it like that? I guess not. So let's just make a very tiny sphere. Very tiny. There we go. We would say add variant or set variant for that thing. Let's put that to variant set 1. And we could go put here a graphed stages. You could put in these 2 variants. We could plug those in there. And we probably need to, let's just have a look. All right, those are nicely centered. All right, so for some reason now the scales are completely off. All right, so it is doesn't seem to like my p-scale anymore. It's sometimes still not always as all right, there we go. So you can see sometimes still a little bit buggy. All right, anyway, now with these set index here, we can set the index. So we could have multiple different types of copies, or you could go in here, you could put an attribute wrangle. Let's say we actually want to keep the ID, by the way. So let's say I'm going to keep ID. We could go set in here, float r equals random at ID. So let's create a random based on ID. And then let's say I at index equals rint ID. So this is now gonna set a, let's input a inspector's geometry spreadsheet here. See, we have an ID now. And which is not correct. Let 1 second. Let me write out R. One second. R. Right. So we have R here between 0 and 1. If we were to say rint R, get 0 and 1. All right. Then we could say I at index equals rint R. All right. So then you can see you get an 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, etc. And that index attribute can actually be used in here. If we put it to index attribute, you can see that we actually get random pieces natively instanced, and now it's actually quite fast. So we don't necessarily want this. We just want a just the first index because we only have one piece. But that's a way that you can do this. I'll just leave this like it is here so you can have a look at it. But yeah, you can see how this is a lot faster. And again, like I'm not completely sure as to why the sort of create native instances stuff in here doesn't do it like this. Perhaps I'm just configuring something wrong. Like I mentioned, I'm still learning Solaris myself. But anyway, this way you can actually set this up. Let's call this debris piece, something like that. So there we go. We have our little thing. Let's call this maybe just debris piece. All right. Turn it on. So you can see, because we're using an index here, it doesn't matter that we change the name there. It's still going to work. All right. Let's merge that in over here. To our camera. And let's turn off materials for now. You can see now we have our debris pieces here. And now it's actually sort of somewhat scrubbable, which it wasn't before. And let's just turn on camera. See. All right, let's actually also turn on our materials. Might be nice. Takes a little bit longer now to start, but you can see here now it's rendering nicely with these debris pieces here. So probably want some motion blur on these as well. As you can see right now, these are not necessarily blurring yet. So let's introduce some motion blur on these things. Let's do geometry settings, instance velocity, set or create. Let's see if this actually works. We might need to do something more. Not completely sure yet. All right, so it actually already works. That's quite nice. Sometimes you need to put a cache, so that will cache the things. But here you can see it's already working. So we're pretty much good to go on that end. All right, look through the camera. So it's starting to look pretty nice. So one more thing that we need to load in here. We need to, of course, load in our lime that's dropping in the center. So let's just do that one. I believe we animated that one on object level, right? So yep. So let's do scene import and then lime. And there we have our lime. We could grab our lime material from the other scene, but like we didn't necessarily change anything from the thing, so from the material that we set up here. So maybe for this thing to just change it up, you could actually just use the import materials here, just to show you that it actually works. Or again, you could just assign it in here, like grab the material, assign it, but just to prove a point. initializing. And I guess my point, oh wait, yeah, we need to actually, so now it's assigned, it gets the, we need to of course load it after we do the material assignment over here, because that's just assigning the ice material to everything. And of course we want it on our lime, where we don't want it on our lime. So let's do that again. All right, there you go. All right, so one more thing. You probably want to change the lights a little bit. Let's just turn this off. Let's jump forward a couple of frames, like something like that. So maybe we want to just add some lights here on to the left to maybe get a little bit more shadows going. To do lights, merge them. Let's do a disk. It's a bit difficult here to see what we're doing. Maybe just let's turn on our karma view. All right, decrease this intensity so we can actually see what we're doing. All right, so the orientation seems correct. All right, let's move it up a little bit. And again, I'm just trying to sort of shape a relatively nice looking scene. So now with that, we get a little bit more light over there. I guess you could play with the color temperature, make this a bit cooler, or I guess I'm just going to keep it white. Maybe I'm going to turn down the intensity of my dome light a little bit. Let's look at it over here. Maybe we want to turn off the motion blur for now. It's going to be a little bit easier to see what we're doing with our lights. All right, so now you get a little bit of a highlight there. I'm not sure on the positioning yet, so let's move it out a little bit more. Let's maybe make it a little bit smaller, harsher shadows. We need to increase the density quite a bit there. Looks quite nice. Let's have a look at another frame. Again, looks pretty. And like maybe I do want to do a little bit with the color temperature there. Maybe I want it to be even smaller with higher intensity. Okay, and the smaller you make it, the harder the shadows are going to be. So just depends on. All right. Try to rotate our light or our HDRI a little bit. See if that makes any difference. All right. So now it seems like here is a little bit less light, so maybe that's nice. All right, so pretty much looking good. And again, we have a rest position on our geometry here. So this noise texture will stick to whatever it is that we're doing. We could play a little bit still with our material if we say, all right, maybe we want a little bit more transparency. Probably on our debris. I don't know if we have, yeah, we already have rest there, so it should also stick nicely. Looking pretty good. All right, so pretty much that's our base image here done. So let's add karma rob. Assign it. Let's just set it up roughly with what I think it's going to be. So let's put it to path trace again. Let's put refraction limit. Let's just keep it like this because we didn't really end up needing too much. Let's disable depth of field. Let's enable velocity blur. And on image output, let's just enable some of our passes. Direct diffuse. Let's enable all of the refractions. We don't really have any emission. We don't really have any subsurface scattering. Let's enable albedo, of course. Ray level outputs. Maybe world position, or not. I always keep putting the one wrong. The world pace. We don't really have UV, so let's not use UV. Let's do the normal one. Where's normal? Normal. All right, let's move normal. Extra render variables. Let's do cryptomat. Where are you? Cryptomat object name. All right, let's put on karma again. Now with this thing selected, probably need to. Oh, we can probably also turn on the denoiser, similar to before. We will probably rebuild our beauty and then denoise it in compositing, but we might as well use the NVIDIA denoise here. Like in compositing, we only have the Intel denoiser. And again, we can rebuild our beauty from our AOVs here. So it doesn't necessarily matter too much if we denoise our beauty. Let's just have a look. Right, we don't really have any code. Combine diffuse, reflection. All right, mission seems to all work fine. Let's have a look at the extra stuff. Indirect diffuse. Where is it? You know what, let's just turn all of them on, then we at least know that we have everything. I mean, doesn't add too much. If they're gonna be blank, then doesn't necessarily do too much. All right. Right, so this render is relatively quick here. Oh, I think this is still, let's see if our camera is actually set to, we need to put it to 1920 by 1080, of course. And then actually use our correct camera here. Oh, we also just want to put here put the resolution here, okay. Probably want to increase the pixel samples a little bit, maybe something like 24. Again, this is going to be quite a slow render. So you could also just put it down. But you can see this resolves a lot slower than the previous shot, just because a lot of refractions and stuff like that. Again, this should finish in roughly 5 minutes, and then it's still not going to be the most noise-free render ever. And this is on a Threadripper 32 core Threadripper 3970X. Yeah. So with that thing out of the way, let's also set up our smoke render. Let's do just stop imports. Let's maybe just go back to our regular view here. Let's grab our smoke thing here. Let's just put it in there. There we go. And you can already see it show up. Let's just have a look. Right, you can see it is already is working pretty much. Not sure if we really need to do much in terms of materials. Let's just have a look. Again, we're just going to be using this as a compositing layer. Let me, by the way, do this dark background. So let's merge in our cameras. So then we probably need our scene cameras here to do a different branch. Merge them in here. Merge our lights. Let's have a look. All right, it's already looking pretty decent. Again, it's like it's a little bit blurry now, but we can probably enable it. So it's, but we're just going to be putting this as an additional layer, and you can kind of see this as a sort of a just a dusty snow type of explosion. So it's a little bit fuzzy here, but that's totally fine. So we probably want to mat out our actual geometry from this thing. So that's similar to what we did before. Geometry settings. Just put our iceberg there. We do want to put on our, you know what, let's just copy and paste the one that we had here, because that had correct settings. Plug it in, but then also let's use it as a mat object. So that's going to be, what's, I probably also need to use the debris as a mat there. All right, so maybe, right, yeah, let's just do it separately. Let's have a look. Hold out modes, mat. Let's have a look what that looks like. Karma. See, it's going to be matted out with our pieces here. And let's do the same with our, you know what, we can probably just fetch our, again, not looking the most organized here, but it's not that complicated of a shot. So out debris, you can organize it better if you want. Let's put this in a fetch. You know what? Let's just also do the other thing as a fetch to organize this a little bit better. All right, let's fetch that thing. All right. Over here, let's fetch that thing. Let's merge them in. And then let's have a look if this works. Karma. Looking good, but no motion blur yet, so that's not correct. So we probably need to do these geometry settings separately on these two elements. And we need to, on our copy points, we need to do nothing on these, and we need to enable instance velocity blur because we are dealing with instances, of course. A little bit hard to see here if the motion blur is actually working. Oh yeah, it's working. All right, so that's great. Let's turn this off. Let's do another karma. Oh, by the way, on our previous karma rope, of course, we need to put it to $root/render. Let's actually put it to the correct output path here. 3D shot 040. I just see that we didn't render a frame for the other one, but that's fine. Let's put it to, right, so it's already correct folder. 40 accept. One. Let's do show, or let's call it beauty. $4.exr. Right. That's looking fine. Let's copy and paste that and put it on here on the other thing. Let's call this one, or you know, no, on this one we first need to call this beauty, or call it ice. Maybe that makes more sense. And on this one we need to put it in a folder called smoke. All right, ice and smoke. All right, smoke. On this one we can turn down the AUVs probably. So let's go to output. Let's turn off all of this stuff. Probably don't really need too much. Don't need that. Don't need crypto mat. We don't really need much at all. We just need this thing. So we have albedo there, and we have normal, and that should, I don't think we even need any of those to denoise in post, but we can probably get away with using this with the already denoised version because it's, I mean, it's quite soft here anyway. Let's turn down the samples on this one because, I mean, it's smoke. Like, it doesn't need to be super high sampled. So yeah, something along those lines. And yeah, then we can just do our little thing with in the out context, do a fetch, put karma in there, call it ice or something like that. And then on the other one, call it smoke. Do it like that. Put that one in there. There we go. And then merge. And then node by node, or again, you can use deadline, or you can use HQ to render or to simulate. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this one, I think. Looking pretty decent. I'm liking the look. Again, it's a little bit of a slow render, depending on your processor, of course. If you have a relatively new or fast Threadripper or Ryzen, then should be doable to render this. But again, if it's really too slow, then you could also just turn off the reflection altogether. Let's put on this thing. Let's double check if the noiser is enabled. So that's looking pretty good. With that out of the way, let's move on to the next shot. So those are going to be the two final shots, so top swirl and side swirl. So let's get into that.